up, guys? Today we're going to be doing part 2 of the My Story Animated. So what the story is basically about, don't go watch part 1, go watch it right now. I'll link it right up in the cards right now and in the description, so and in the end screen. So please go check that out before watching part 2 of this. So yeah, what happens in the story is she was 14 years old, she was living her best teenage life, and now she come across her real parents. So this guy left her. He offered her a lift to come with her to drop her at home because she was walking to karate lesson. Now she was getting soaking wet, and when she came home the rain was pouring all over, so he offered her a lift. But what didn't she know? It was her real parents. So he gave her a box. It was the daddy that was driving the car. Her mother wasn't in it. So the daddy was giving her a box, but she doesn't know it's her daddy. So he gave her the box, so she opened the box to find letters of her identity in both parents. So yeah, let's continue.
I didn't even know my adopted parents had even had a kid before. I mean, now that I thought about it, it made sense that they seemed particularly good at raising a child. After all, they'd done it before. Suddenly, I wondered who my dad was. Did that mean he was still alive too? As I sat thinking about how I might actually be able to meet my real parents, my adopted parents came through the door. They could tell straight away that something was up, and before I even had the chance to speak, my dad grabbed the box out of my hands and ran out of the house with it. Well, that did it. As if I could be any more furious, I started screaming at my mom. "I can't believe you! You're a liar!
Y'all see that hair looking like Naruto, okay?
You're a liar! How could you lie like that? You told me my mom died! My mom is your daughter! This is so messed up! You're my gran!" I couldn't stop shouting at her. She just sat there, sobbing, and said she'd done it for her daughter's own good, and for mine too. She said that if people had known her 14-year-old daughter had given birth, our family would never live it down. I honestly didn't care about what she was saying. I just felt so shocked and sick that she could lie to me about her daughter being dead. What kind of sicko fakes their own kid's death like that? I went to my
I don't know, your granny.
Locked my door. I needed to get away from these people. My grandparents? Adopted parents? I didn't even know what to call them anymore. My dad, or should I say my granddad, came home later that night, drunk.
Because he was probably sobbing from all that nonsense that has been happening at home, so he went back and go drink some wine at the bar, okay? He ain't got this whole life down, okay?
Hear them arguing all night long. I'd managed to keep one photo from the box, of me and my real parents. The man seriously looked so familiar. In the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up and realized I knew who it was. The man in the photo was the man who'd given me a lift home. It was him. I knew it, which meant I'd met my dad. It felt like my heart might stop. I had to find him. I didn't have to look hard because the next morning he came knocking at our door. My parents wouldn't let him in, but I pushed my way through them and threw the door open. He was crying, saying he'd been trying to make contact with me for months. We fell into each other's arms crying, and my parents just stood there silently, frozen.
Oh no, that's the worst awkward parents. You're opening the door for your parents. They're gonna bust a tear right now. They're gonna be hugging and your grandparents will be looking like, what do we do now? What's gonna happen to us now? Y'all gonna leave us or something?
Frozen. He couldn't stop crying, and he said he was sorry, but he was too late. He said my mom had been dying to meet me for years.
No! Worst possible case scenario. So her mom was waiting for her years and ages to finally see the face of her beautiful daughter. Taunted Anima said.
But now that chance was gone. I didn't understand what he meant. I could barely make out what he was saying through all of his tears. Then he told us. My mom had been diagnosed with cancer last year, and she'd sadly passed away that morning. My whole life felt like it was falling apart. My adopted parents, standing behind me, were suddenly hysterical. I thought my mom was going to have a panic attack. Their daughter had died, and they hadn't even seen her for 14 years. It felt like something out of a movie. It couldn't be real. These were my grandparents, and this was my dad. And here he was telling us that my real mom had just died that morning, and now I'd never had the chance to meet her. It felt like I was losing her all over again. When I was young, I'd had to deal with the fact that she died in a car crash. And now, here I was mourning her all over again. This time for her real death. And I hadn't even met her. That day we sat and made funeral plans. It was the last thing any of us felt like doing, but it had to be done. Even though my real dad had never forgiven my grandparents, or my adopted parents, whatever you want to call them, he knew he had to sit with them now and sort this out, even if just for the sake of me. I felt lucky that I'd finally met my dad, my real dad. It was like he'd come back from the dead. But also, my life got turned totally upside down. I knew I had to find a way to forgive my grandparents. They were already suffering enough with the news of my mom dying, and I didn't think they would be able to cope if I just up and left them. My mom's funeral was one of the most surreal moments of my life. Imagine going to your mom's funeral, a mom you've never even met. It crushed me. It was the hardest day of my life. Eventually, I forgave my grandparents completely and started hanging out with my dad a lot. I couldn't believe how similar we were. He loved martial arts too. Seems my obscure interests weren't so obscure after all. So even though I never met my mom, at least I'd met my dad. And so in a way, I guess it was kind of a blessing. Now I have grandparents and a dad. From thinking my parents were dead, to meeting one of them and realizing they'd both been alive this whole time. Well, life can be very surprising. What do you think of my...
Okay, well, that was a very nice story, but make sure to check out part 1 though, because this is just a continued base story from part 1, okay? Okay, but anyways, that's it for today, guys. Make sure to subscribe to join the right army. I love you guys so much. Thanks for watching. Love you guys. Bye, guys.